Welcome to Behind the Tools. Here's Tradefy CEO and your host, Michael Steger.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Another episode. This week, our first guest actually from an insurance company. So it's a topic I know that most trades love to hear about. And it's a big issue, certainly with things like tool theft and other parts of the business. So I'm delighted to welcome Jennifer Steger from Trade Risk Insurance over in Australia. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. Great to have you on board. Jennifer, do you want to start and just walk through kind of what your company does and where you're focused?
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, Trade Risk Insurance Brokers. We are an insurance broker in Australia based in Brisbane, and we look after mostly trade business clients. So electricians, carpenters, plumbers, that sort of thing, and help them with their business insurance needs.
Yeah, and has the business always been focused mainly on, I mean, most of your customers are trade businesses, right? I think from my understanding from the name of the company. Has that always been a focus?
Yes, yeah, right from the start, that was a niche that the managing director, Shane Moore, who started the company, he saw that was a great place to market insurance, and so he started off looking at ways he could grab attention for trade businesses and get noticed in order to look at helping them out with their insurance needs. So it grew from just him building a website, and now we've got a staff of 10 here, and growing all the time.
Fantastic. And, you know, just for some people that are listening, some people will probably already have business insurance for their trade business. Some might not have. Do you want to, what are the usual reasons? What are trade businesses usually signing up for from an insurance perspective?
Well, the main insurance policy that all businesses need is public and products liability insurance. So that's the sort of the base level of where business insurance starts, and then there are additional types of insurance that come on board there. So depending on what the structure of the business is, if they have an actual business premises, then you might look at sort of more property and stock type of insurances. Otherwise, if they're a mobile business, you might have a few tools, bit of stock that you might keep in your van or utility, and that sort of thing.
And how do you approach? So when a business gets in touch with you and says, "Look, hey, I need some form of insurance," and it might be they've heard about tool theft, and which is a sort of big issue everywhere. What advice are the advice they're usually looking for from an insurance perspective?
Well, they're looking at what insurance they do need to protect their business, protect their assets, all that sort of stuff, and what they can do to maybe minimize, having to make insurance claims and that sort of thing. So we sort of use our experience and knowledge on ways to mitigate the reason to make insurance claims and that sort of thing, so we can pass on that knowledge and advice.
And sort of apart from the obvious stuff, there'll probably be a few cynics on here around insurance and how it works and premiums, and then excess and all those things, what you end up paying out. What would you say to those in terms of what are the main risks of not having insurance?
Well, some claims are get into the tens or hundreds of thousands really, really quickly. And a lot of those costs are probably lying in the defense costs area of perhaps defending yourself in the event of being accused of a claim.
Right.
So those costs, especially in today's day and age with litigation where it is, those costs can add up really, really quickly. And if you don't have that insurance in place and that, solicitor defense on tap yourself, then, you really putting yourself in a position where you could lose your business, lose your personal assets, all that sort of stuff, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
could end up really bad for you.
What's the most? I mean, that's a good example of one, I guess, where an electrician's done some work. The owner of that either commercial property or residential property claims that something was done wrong, which has had an impact elsewhere. I imagine that's quite common, usually trying to unwind that stuff and figure out what went wrong. What are the most common sort of use cases that you see in terms of where insurance has been needed?
Yeah, I'd probably say a lot of the time is where, like say, electricians and other trades are working on people's roofs,
Yeah.
And oftentimes it might be that they miss something, that they don't replace a tile or don't seal it properly, or they are just walking along the roof and damage it. There's a lot of property damage claims rather than, say, personal injury, where
Right.
where somebody might get injured on site. That probably, um, when that happens, it can be very expensive, but it doesn't happen as often as property damage. So yeah, so that's what I see.
And when that happens and someone makes a claim, how do the premiums? How does that impact premiums? I guess for the next year, if they've made 2 or 3 of those types of claims, because stuff happens, accidents happen. What does that look like?
Yeah, so that can make things really difficult. It depends on the circumstances, but often the insurers are looking for trends. So if that particular uh, insured business has had 3 claims where the same sort of thing has happened, where, say, it might be damage to a roof from walking on it, they'd be wanting to see from the insured that they've made real change in their business practices,
Right.
and the training of their staff, that sort of thing, so that they can be assured that you know the client is doing as much as they can to stop having to make any more claims that fall into that similar bracket. Um, and Oftentimes they will just if they've paid a lot out in claims, they will just bow out and say, no, we don't want this risk anymore. And that can make things more difficult as well. But that's the beauty of having a broker, so we can make sure that you're not left without insurance. We'll find you a home. We'll
Right.
do what we can to make sure that we can get it for you with reasonable and viable terms and conditions, with regard to premiums and excesses, etc.
Yeah, and sort of on that topic, we've got trades owners from all over the world. If they're not in Australia and they're not able to give you a call, what's your advice? Not all insurance brokers clearly are very focused on trades specifically, and I'm sure many of our people listening to this will have a insurance broker who's more of a generic insurance broker that covers those things. What's your advice in terms of what to look for from an insurance broker if you're a trade business owner?
Yeah, well, I think if you are asking questions of your broker, like, what does this exclusion mean? What does that wording mean on your policy? I guess if you're getting answers from your broker that are making sense to you, then that's where I see a good broker. They're able to, you know, uh, filter that language down that in a way that makes sense to you and isn't just jargon, and they're making sure that they're
Right.
protecting your interests. So yeah.
And then from a sort of cost perspective, so if I'm new to this, setting up a business, I'm a 5-person trade company, maybe I'm an electrician. What is the average? It's hard to say averages. Obviously, every circumstance is different. I know what you're going to say there, but do you have approximates about the sort of ballpark costs of insurance that most trades business owners are in the region of? So it's something to think about as they set up.
Oh, look, it's really hard to give that sort of estimate, because there's a lot more factors that go into it, where the actual works are being taking
Right.
place, whether or not engaging subcontractors or labour hire firms to get staff in to help you. Whether or not you do any work with heat, that sort of thing, all these factors sort of take into account, and then the different insurance companies will look at each of those factors differently, and they might apply more premiums or they might apply higher excesses, etc. So that's why, when we get all the information we need to get quotes, we look at all those things and then, make a recommendation based on what we think is most suitable for your business and how you run it.
So if I'm a trade business owner and I'm thinking about, maybe researching my current insurance provider, seeing if I'm getting a good deal, what are the most common factors? You talked about a few there about subcontracting, type of work. What are the sort of top 5 to 10 things that you tend to ask about that are important?
Yeah, well, most of the insurers will base their premiums around the estimated turnover of the business, the total income, how many staff, the subcontractors and labour hire, those sorts of things, and just generally any other factors that might go into why your risk might be better than Joe Blow down the road. If you've got specific measures in place that make sure that you're not making those mistakes, that you're double, triple checking things, etc., taking photographic evidence of the works you're doing, all that sort of stuff. If you can provide that sort of information to an insurer, that makes it a lot easier for them to say, okay, well, yeah, this is a good risk, and we might be able to lower the premium or provide lower excesses, or something like that.
Cool. So you sort of touched on something I was going to ask you around, which is like, what is the best way for trade business owners to think about reducing their premium? What are the steps they can take to sort of get that premium down, or be seen as a better investment from a insurance provider's perspective?
Yeah. So I was touching on ways to mitigate potential property damage claims on a liability policy. Staff training and making sure you're taking before and after photographs of the works that are being done. So that's even just a double check for yourself to make sure that you have, replaced that tile on the roof that you took off to do some work or whatever. If you're taking a photograph afterwards, you're going to know whether you didn't put it back on or not.
Completely.
But obviously then, with theft claims and all that sort of stuff, security systems in place and, that kind of thing, those all assist in helping keeping those premiums down.
Yeah, we talk a lot about job photography. I mean, and we don't actually talk about it from an insurance perspective, but more from a customer experience perspective. When you do get, which obviously often leads to insurance, which is a customer that says, "Oh, this was broken," and you're like, "Well, we've got a picture to show that it wasn't when we left," and so probably is their fault. And then you touched on tool theft. That's obviously a big hot topic that I think there's a lot of noise in the industry about the lack of effort that's been put against that from an industry perspective, not necessarily an individual trade. What is the I guess a couple of questions here. One is, what is the defined standard in terms of security, right? If I'm thinking about buying got a new van, I've got all my tools in it, what should I have as a bare minimum?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a bare minimum, you've just got to make sure that the vehicle is locked. You'd be hard pressed to find in today's market a cover that will not have an exclusion for if there's no forcible entry. So if the vehicle is not locked, then it's likely it's not going to be able to be covered. So first of all, lock the vehicle. If you've got alarms and any other deterrents, that sort of thing, then that's going to help. Oftentimes too, trades businesses will have like roof racks and things kept on top of the vehicle. Just tying them with ropes, that sort of thing, that's not really sufficient. You need to have
Right.
like chains and padlocks, that sort of thing. And a good idea when you are taking out insurance for that is to take pictures of those security items, so that if they take the whole thing, you can say, look, we did have the security in
Right.
place, but they have forced their way in. It just makes things move a lot, easier and smoother, to show that you did everything you could, and now you need to make an insurance claim.
And have you seen an uptick in tool theft at all in the last few years?
Oh, look, it's been fairly sort of high for quite a number of years now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it's recently spiked any further, but it has been, something that has been fairly high for some time, and the premiums do reflect that essentially. Like the premiums are probably higher rates on that section of cover than any other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of
And
the
then,
high frequency of
because of the amount of
claims.
times it happens, yeah.
Yeah.
And then sort of my last question really is around, what do you see as the most common? What are the common? You've referenced a couple, I think, but what are the common things you see claims for when you're processing claims? What are the most common things you see the businesses that you work with sort of come through to you for?
Yeah. Well, like I said, a lot of property damage claims. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's often damages to roofs whilst you're up there, that sort of thing, or it's that you haven't quite sealed things off or something, and so you might not actually know that there's a problem until there's like a rain weather event,
Right.
and then water damage occurs in the home or office, and then that's when they realize that, oh, that actually wasn't done to standard.
Right. So, I mean, there's some big preventative measures there that can take place. Talks about photography and all those things. It shows if that's your number
Exactly.
one sort of seems to be the biggest claims that come through, then that's a big opportunity to
Absolutely.
reduce that. Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic.
definitely.
Cool. So if you weren't in insurance, which trade you're working with trades companies and tradespeople, which trade would you pick?
Oh, which trade? I think probably electricians. I see a lot of electrician businesses, and I think it's just it's a really interesting job. It allows you to sort of really be able to, I guess, light up a place, for want of a better term. But yeah, it's a good, I think, industry to be in. I've also seen that it hasn't been affected by some of the other, building concerns and
Right.
whatnot as much as other trades. The electricians seem to be really steady, like even through COVID. Like a lot of electricians we're seeing an uptick in works, rather than lowering, because people were staying at home and wanting to get those things fixed and upgraded and all
Yeah.
that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that one.
And then what's the largest claim that you've had to deal with?
I've probably seen a couple in the hundreds of thousands, and that's been often where there's more than one party
Right.
involved. So a lot of that is defence costs. And it might be working out what proportion of the claim you are actually responsible for.
Right.
So the damage itself that you're responsible for might be only, say, 20 or 30,000, but then there's all these costs associated with the defence costs and
Yeah.
assessors reports and all this other sort of stuff.
And with that in mind, what has been the sort of easiest and then the hardest trades that you've dealt with from an insurance claim perspective?
Well, I think because of the nature of plumbing being a water,
Right.
dealing with water, that can be really difficult in the sense that if you damage, if you say don't turn off a tap properly in the 5th floor of a building, and the pipe bursts, the water travels down to the lower levels, then you're seeing a number of parties involved with the
Right.
claim,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So where there's more than one party, that's when things get more difficult.
And the easier ones, should I say?
Well, they're probably just where it's a clear cut. Say for example, you dropped the chandelier that you were installing.
Right.
You're at fault. They know you're at fault. You're like, let's just get a quote to replace the item. Submit it all to the insurer, and it's done.
And then the sort of last question, lots of people have different opinions on insurance, as most people do about all professions, let's be honest. What's the biggest myth that you tend to find when you talk to trades companies, sort of first time customers with you? What's the largest myth around insurance you'd like to, I guess, burst?
That it's a necessary evil. I hear that a lot, and I disagree wholeheartely. I think that insurance is the way that businesses can be viable. If you make a mistake and you do damage someone's property, or you do injure somebody, and are responsible for those costs, without insurance, you wouldn't be able to sustain those sorts of costs and still
Right.
run your business. Insurance is there to make sure that you can still continue business, and still, even if you do make a mistake.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Jennifer, this is really insightful. Thanks for that. I'm sure some people listening that will think differently about whether they should or shouldn't have insurance. And I think you've outlined probably some of the areas that are the high risk ones, that if you don't have it, what it could cost. And like you say, it probably only takes one mistake in a year to obviously get the payback from that insurance. So really appreciate you spending the time. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
And just in terms of anyone that is in Australia, wants to maybe give you guys a bell, get in touch, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so our website, traderisk.com.au, we're all on there. So if you want to look for myself personally, I'm on the team page, but otherwise anybody here at Trade Risk can help you. There's lots of information on our website for you to have a look at and get in contact if you like.
Cool. Great. Thank you. We'll appreciate you spending the time, and thanks everyone else for listening. Until next week, we shall see you then. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Behind the Tools is brought to you by Tradify, job management software for your trade business. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know by leaving a review, and be sure to tell your mates about it. Email behindthetools@tradifyhq.com if you or someone you know would be keen to join the show as a guest.